Trade and Investment from Australia. It was a good meeting between the two of us. We discussed a number of things. The first one would have been with respect to some of the recent developments on APEC. And I think one of the more positive developments on APEC is the progress that the senior officials have made the last couple of days on a couple of things. One of which is basically the notion of promoting goods that are in support of sustainable development through rural development and poverty alleviation. Surely the senior officials have completed, but the ministerial meetings will take place today and tomorrow before the leaders take up their meetings shortly thereafter. The second would have been the preparation for the upcoming ministerial conference for the WTO, which will be in December. As you know, the three issues that have been discussed amongst all the WTO members have been moving in the right direction, and it is I think, good to basically make sure that the progress that we make with this APEC summit will have a positive impact on whatever will happen at the ministerial conference for the WTO in December. And it's also good that we have the presence of the Director General of the WTO is here already, and he'll be meeting up with the 21 Ministers of Trade, and he will be having his bilateral meeting with Andrew later today, and that I think will yield some positive results for the benefit of not only APEC but also the WTO. The last bit is with regards to some of the bilateral issues that have been on hand between Australia and Indonesia. I think the highlight of that would be the issue of cattle that basically will need to be imported from a number of countries, including Australia. There is positivity in the sense that, by way of the recent state visit of the Prime Minister, we have basically a number of companies from both sides of the equation expressing their interest in making investments into Australia, and also Australian companies expressing interest as to invest in Indonesia for the purpose of basically ensuring food security for Indonesia in the long run. I think that would be it in summary. And let me ask my colleague, Mr. Andrew Rock, to say a few words.
Well, thanks very much, Minister Peter, and good morning all. Could I just firstly acknowledge the wonderful organisation that's taken place. I've been here 2 days now in meetings and discussions, and the organisation, if the last 2 days is any indication, this APEC meeting is going to be enormously successful. So I would like to congratulate you and your team for the efforts you put into this, and it's a really significant organisation and presentation, and I think it's a great showcase of how Indonesia is performing at the present time. Secondly, just on the issues that the Minister raised, there is a significant connection between APEC and the WTO meeting, which again will be hosted by Indonesia in December. It is very heartening to Australia to see the increasing emphasis, and it's being pushed strongly by Indonesia on the importance of agriculture. But not just the importance of agriculture, but the connection between trade and agriculture. And this focus on sustainable agriculture, how it will be a very important part of lifting people out of poverty in many parts of the region. I suppose in many ways in Australia we see this century as a century of water and food security. This will be the dominant issue over the next century, especially when you look at the explosion of the middle class across the region, which everyone must welcome in the most enthusiastic way, because we're seeing literally hundreds of millions of people being taken out of poverty and being given a good quality of life, which is what every individual deserves. So that's going to put a strain on food security and water. We have got the capacity, without a doubt, but it requires a very keen focus on sustainable agriculture, and it requires a connection with trade, so that every country is making the most of the things that they're very good at, in whatever part of agriculture that is, and other industries. Finally, on the question of this week, I've had the great pleasure to be here all week. I was joined with the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, and Julie Bishop in Jakarta the first couple of days. We had the most heartening and warm bilateral discussions. As Gita has mentioned, we did bring with us 20 of the most senior business people in Australia, and there is very keen interest across all sorts of sectors for the opportunities that Indonesia presents, and it's certainly an ambition of mine to continue to highlight and expose our business sector in Australia to the opportunities that are presented in Indonesia. And at the same time, we were really heartened by the way in which President Yudhoyono, Gita and other colleagues are looking to Australia to assist with their food security issues, and the live cattle trade, to get some normality back into that. Australia has to take a lot of responsibility for the problems that we've had, and I must say I really thank you, you in particular, Gita, because you have worked assiduously and have understood the value for both countries of restoring normality to that trade. We've still got things to work through, but it's been a very significant development. We've got this extra 75,000 cattle this month, this quarter, I'm sorry. Now that has breathed great comfort and enthusiasm in the industry. It's been a really difficult 2 years or so since the trade was cut off unexpectedly and unfortunately. But we're now going to put that behind us, get on with it, because it is of great interest to both countries. It's in our interest, and we've seen overnight the purchase of the properties in Australia by the industry here, and I think it can only improve the trade and the relationship and the understanding when you've got Australians involved here in the live cattle trade, so they understand the issues with feedlots and the slaughtering and all of the rest, the imperatives that the Indonesians face in receiving these cattle and the sort of cattle they want, and all of those sorts of issues. It has occurred because we've had Australians financially and commercially involved in partnership here. Now to have Indonesians similarly involved in some capacity on the other end, the breeding end, I think will also create a very significant understanding through the whole value chain, and it only augurs well for the future. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Oh, questions? Okay.
First one from ABC.
ABC. But to both ministers, on cattle, you speak of normalising the trade and of the 75,000 cattle that are meant to go this quarter. But in the Australian industry, there are concerns about unnecessary quarantine testing for diseases like blue tongue and BJD. Is there any frustration on either government's part that they might become de facto barriers to the resumption of normality?
That's for me to take that because you're quoting some people from Australia. As I said, there are protocols and health issues which are subject of continuing discussion, and there's been already recognition on the Indonesian side of some of those issues, and I'm just very confident that with the removal of quotas, there was pressure in Indonesia on how they do make sure that all the procedures are appropriate. We've now got to work through, and if it is excessive, and some of them I suspect are unnecessary, because we do comply in many respects already, but we have to prove that to the Indonesians. We have to satisfy their concerns, and the Indonesian government, with 250 million people, it's very important, that these sorts of issues are handled in a systematic and comprehensive way. But the bottom line is the trade, is back in place, and it's growing, and it is very important, I think, for Indonesia that it has sustainable and certainty associated with the protein coming into the country. It will keep prices down. We'll keep prices at a level here which is satisfactory to consumers, but doesn't undermine the local cattle in Indonesia. So I'm quite confident that these issues that are being raised will be worked through, and we'll see a very sustainable trade.
Thank you, Andrew. I think it's important to recognize that the consumption of protein in Indonesia has risen on a continuous and consistent basis, and there is no reason for that not to continue in the many years ahead of us. And that would basically mean and take, our taking a view on maintaining food security. Now, the security of supply has to come from wherever, locally and non-locally, which is why we have taken a view to basically lift the restrictions on, the importation of cattle. I think this is something that's going to be needed for a while. Now, lifting the restrictions and quotas does not mean we're not being cognizant of quarantine and health requirements. But having said that, I think whatever we take a view on, whatever view we take on stuff like that has to be in accordance with international standards. And this is, I think, within the discussions that we have internally on our side, but also bilaterally when we meet with our friends from Australia or any other country. So I'm hopeful that, if this progresses in the right direction, not only will we be able to secure supply, but we will be able to maintain stability of prices in the midterm and long term in Indonesia.
Ya, bahasa Indonesia Pak ya. Pertanyaannya pertama Pak, pengusaha Indonesia kan ada yang berencana untuk investasi ranch di Australia. Apakah itu dibicarakan dan mungkin bisa juga mungkin dibagi pendapatnya soal itu? Yang kedua, Indonesia kan sudah membawa Australia ke WTO untuk permintaan diskusi soal terkait rokok Pak. Itu apakah ada dibicarakan dan mungkin sejauh mana perkembangannya?
There's two questions. The first is related to an expression or an intention by an Indonesian company or a group of Indonesian companies to invest in the cattle industry in Australia. And the second is with regards to the registration to the WTO with respect to the plain packaging, whether or not these two items have been discussed in our in our meeting just now. In answer, bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris? Bahasa Inggris boleh. Okay. On the first one, yes, we did talk about it, but we talked about actually mutuality of investments. Indonesian companies investing in Australia, and we talked about this particular company that has actually invested in Australia, Suntory. They made an acquisition, or I think in the process of finalizing the acquisition, but it's not going to be limited to just that. I think there's a number of other Indonesian companies that are looking into Australia, but at the same time, there's also a discussion about how more Australian companies could look into Indonesia as to help ensure the security of supply in Indonesia. On the second one, we did touch on that topic, but whatever we do in the context of what gets registered to the WTO, we will go through the due process. And they have to do whatever they have to do, and we have to do whatever they have to do. And this is all in the spirit of respecting international rules and regulations.
I don't have any direct.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Okay. Hey, Helen.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Pak. Helen Brown, ABC Australia Network. I guess this is probably a question more for Pak Gita. The beef system in Indonesia has been racked by problems for a few years, partly because of what happened with Australia, but also I've been told of concerns about the import licensing system and quotas. Pak, how confident are you that these changes will herald a new era for the industry in Indonesia and bring people the product they want at the price they want? Thank you.
I'm quite confident every time we make changes. And I'm confident of the nature of the changes that we've been making so far. And I think they're moving in the right direction. And by way of taking a view on price, I think it's good for us going forward because that's the barometer for not only the producers but also the consumers. And as you've seen in recent months, I think there has been a pretty significant inflationary pressure on our side, and that I think needs to be taken a view of. And I'm quite confident that by way of the steps that we've taken recently on the Ministry of Trade and also the other relevant ministries' sites, I think we're confident that we'll be able to sustain this for as long as we need to.
Could I just say that having been part of the discussions with the President, with the Cabinet, including Gita, it was clear, I felt, that it was the tone and the intent and the detailed way in which the President responded on these issues was a clear indication to me that Indonesia has made a decision to sensibly get the trade back as best we can to normality, because it's in both countries' interests.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hello. Oh, possible.